How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Infinite Sports. I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder. To recap last night's game between the Yankees and the Blue Jays, Game 3 of the American League Division Series. And wow, all I got to say is wow. What a game that was last night. And it wasn't easy for the Yankees. It was not easy. They made it very tough on themselves, but they were able to come back and win the game by a final score of 9-6, and we have a series. We have a series, everybody. With a Game 4 tonight, Cam Shlittler against Louis Varland, but it's a bullpen game for the Blue Jays. After using their bullpen these last two games, they're going with yet all bullpen. So that does play into the Yankees' favor, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be a slam dunk for the Yankees. They're still going to have to score runs. Cam Shlittler's going to have to pitch well because the Yankees' starters in the series have not been good. Carlos Rodón was not good last night. He was out very early in the game, but the Yankees' bullpen held it down, and the Yankees' offense never gave up, and that's why we got a Game 4 tonight. So right away, things did not get off to a good start for the Yankees. So, I don't know how they do this, but Carlos Rodón ends up walking Davis Schneider to bring up Vladimir Guerrero Jr. You can't do that in that situation with him coming up and how he's been in this series. He's been the reincarnation of Big Papi. He's killed the Yankees in the series. He has showed up, and he showed up again. And the entire at-bat, despite them walking Davis Schneider, I'm going like this. I held up the four fingers the entire time because I'm like, how can you pitch to him? And sure enough, and I don't know how this happened, but because usually I'm the one that's ahead. But upstairs, my family saw it before me, so I hear them moaning and groaning. And all of a sudden, Vlad hits one into the bullpen out in left center field. Well, not the bullpen, but near the bullpen, left center field. I couldn't believe it. Like, how could you pitch to this guy? Now, they did learn because they walked him. Later on in the game, they intentionally walked him. But the way he's been hitting, I mean, you just gotta walk him, which they did do, but then it ended up hurting them anyways. So then Rodón gets the next two outs. So now here come the Yankees in the bottom of the first. Now, one thing that I was surprised by is, the Blue Jays, the Yankees have been playing tight defense, but the Blue Jays throughout the whole year, they've been tight when it comes to defense. But they weren't in this game. There were some plays that should have been made that they did not make, and it led to runs by the Yankees. Some huge runs by the Yankees. So Grisham ends up grounding out Judge, base hit, continues to hit well. Despite not hitting a home run, but we'll get to that. Don't worry. Bellinger ends up flying out. Then Ben Rice hits a ground ball to the right side. Former Yankee Isaiah Kiner-Falefa bobbles the ball. That allows Rice to reach. And then here comes Giancarlo Stanton. He lines a single to left field, and the Yankees are on the board 2-1. Rodón pitches a scoreless second inning. The Yankees actually challenged a play. The Yankees ended up losing both challenges early on in the game. So Andres Gimenez gets hit by a pitch. They review it. I don't know. It looked like it might have missed him, but the call ended up being upheld. He reaches first base. Yankees lose their first challenge there. But yeah, Blue Jays not able to get anything going there. No runs. Ernie Clement had a great night last night. I think he had 4 hits. But yeah, so there were 2 guys on, but Rodón was able to get Springer to pop out to Ben Rice. So then we go to the bottom of the second. Quick and easy bottom of the second. But top of the third now comes around. Davis Schneider doubles. So now they walk Vlad. So I'm like, okay, that you should do that. But you got to be able to make the correct pitches and be able to get out of it. So now Kirk ends up lining out to Judge, but then Varsho ends up singling. Bellinger Looks like he's going to make the sliding catch, and it ends up hitting off his glove, and Davis Schneider ends up scoring. But, I mean, Grisham throws the ball in, Jazz Chisholm's at second base, and he's not even looking in the direction of home plate, so Schneider ends up scoring. Jazz throws late, and they get the third run of the game. And then everybody was talking about how Jazz was yawning at one point and how that was a bad look. Look, Jazz had his moment too later in the game as well to redeem himself from that. But yeah, so it's 3-1 Blue Jays. Lackadaisical defense by the Yankees with Jazz not being alert to what was going on. And I guess, yeah, because you think, but they were talking about it on the broadcast. Yeah, don't assume that they're not going to run. Because we saw what happened in the World Series last year. That reminded me of the World Series last year, that kind of play that transpired. And the Blue Jays, the plays they were making or the plays they weren't making, reminded me of what the Yankees did in the World Series last year. So then Ernie Clement comes up. He singles to left field. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., an aggressive send. He comes around. He ends up scoring just ahead of the tag of Austin Wells to make it 4-1. Then Santander comes up, and he singles the opposite way to right field, batting from the right side. 2 more runs score. Carlos Rodón out of the game. Out of the game. And that was it. That was it. I thought that was it. Then Addison Barger comes in the game to replace IKF. He goes to third base. He comes up, and he actually ends up striking out to Fernando Cruz, who came in. And then Fernando Cruz gets Andres Jimenez to ground out as well. So I forgot to mention the Ernie Clement play, the Ernie Clement single in the top of the second. It wasn't, a typical single. Ben Rice was playing so far off the bag that it was a race to the bag, and Clement just beat him. They both slid to the bag. Clement beat him ahead of the tag, or ahead of the slide by Rice. And, that reminded me again of what happened in the World Series last year. So there was a lot of things that reminded me of the World Series last year, which is not good. So bottom of the third comes around. Grisham comes up, ends up hitting a double. But before that, the Yankees challenged another play where there was catcher's interference. Grisham, as he's swinging, he hits Alejandro Kirk's glove. So they reviewed it. And you thought, all right, the Yankees are going to win this challenge. Grisham's going to get first base. Well, they end up upholding that call. So now the Yankees have no challenges left. And it's only the bottom of the third inning. And Boone was livid. And I don't blame him. They had every right to challenge that. They ruled that incorrectly. But then Grisham ends up doubling to right field anyway. So he ends up getting an extra base out of that. So no harm, no foul there. Wild pitch by Bieber. Grisham goes to third. Judge comes up, continues his hot hitting, drives in a run, makes it 6-2. Then Bellinger comes up. He lines a single. So now you got first and third. So the Yankees, at that point, it's like, all right, if you want to show the fans that you're still fighting, you got to drive in more runs here. So Ben Rice comes up, doesn't get the job done exactly. I think maybe they could have got a double play, but Vlad ends up throwing home. They get Judge caught in a rundown. They end up tagging him out. But Bellinger gets to third. I thought maybe Rice could have went to second base, but then while they were trying to get Judge out, but I guess maybe they were like, just stay there so there's not an extra, they don't end up getting a double play out of it. So now it's first and third still with one out. So Stanton comes up, and he hits a rope to center field. I thought maybe it was going to find grass, but Varsho ended up tracking it down, ends up just being a sac fly, so 6-3 now. Jazz ends up walking. They bring in Rosario to replace McMahon, which I get because the Blue Jays brought in Fluharty, who's a lefty, but now you lose McMahon's glove. Now, it didn't end up costing the Yankees defensively. Rosario actually doubled later in the game, which was huge, and that led to an insurance run. But yeah, they bring him up for this AB, and he ends up popping out. So rally ends up ending there. So top of the fourth comes around. Rosario goes to third base. Vlad ends up singling again. There actually were a couple of fans that ran onto the field, and you could see it on social media. You're not going to see it on national television. But, yeah, so that kind of delayed the game a little bit. Vlad ends up singling. They bring in Camilo Doval to replace Fernando Cruz, and he gets Alejandro Kirk to ground out. Now, here comes the bottom of the fourth, everybody. The bottom of the fourth. Volpe leads off. He strikes out. But then Austin Wells comes up, and he hits a pop-up to left field. So you got Barger and I think Davis Schneider was playing left field. Right? Davis Schneider was out in left field. Yeah, so Davis Schneider was out in left field. So it looked like, I mean, it should have been Davis Schneider's ball. But all of a sudden, you see Barger continuing to run further and further out, and he ends up dropping the ball. And Wells goes to second base. And one of the first things I said after that was, is this the reverse fifth inning from last year? Like, are the Yankees now going to capitalize on the mistakes by the even more so by the Blue Jays, because they did it in the first inning. Now, all three of the Yankees' mistakes happened in one inning. The Blue Jays' mistakes happened in several innings, including the misplay by Santander out in right field, which we get to later. So Wells gets on. Grisham walks. So now they bring in Louis Varland, who's pitching tonight, to face Aaron Judge. Down 3 runs. And I'm sitting there going, come on. Now this has to be it. How many chances, even on the broadcast, how many chances are you going to get in these kind of spots, in these kind of moments? So first pitch is a strike. I think it ended up being, it was a foul ball. Next pitch, 100 miles an hour, right down the middle. Judge just misses it. And he did a little head nod. So he kind of was like, okay, all right. I know what you're doing. Next pitch. I don't know how Judge hit this. I really don't. Inside pitch, not even close to being a strike. Bat speed, he hits the ball down the line. And I hear Joe Davis faintly because I didn't have the volume blasting. If it's fair, like I heard Joe Davis say that, and I'm like, is this actually going to be a home run? And it hits off the foul pole for a 3-run homer, and the Yankees tie the game, and Judge has his postseason moment. We have been waiting for so long for Aaron Judge to have a moment like this, and this was one of the biggest home runs of the postseason, and one of the biggest home runs. You might say this is an exaggeration in postseason history. I mean, that's how monstrous of a home run this was in that moment. You're down 6-1. Now all of a sudden it's 6-6. And the Yankees are alive and have a chance to win this game now. It was unbelievable. And you had not just Yankee fans, but I think baseball fans all over the place wanted Judge to have this moment. Even the broadcasters, even Joe Davis and John Smoltz, they were coming to Judge's defense. Like, not even just Yankee fans. It was all over. Everybody wanted Judge to have this moment, and he had it. I am so happy for him that he had this moment. But they got to build off of this, right? Yankees are still down 2-1. But what an incredible moment. I can only imagine what the stadium was like when it happened. And this moment here also, this game reminded me of the wild card game from 2017. This gives me another excuse to bring it up. Because the Yankees were down early in that game. Now, they weren't down 6-1. They were down 3-0 after the top of the first inning. Okay? But Girardi yanked Severino. Bullpen game the rest of the way. The bullpen was almost flawless. They did give up an additional run. The Yankees ended up winning that game 8-4. But then Didi comes up in the bottom of the first inning after they get 2 guys on. Gardner walks. Judge singles. Gardner goes to third. And Didi hits that home run to tie the game. And you know the rest of the story. The Yankees won. It was similar to that. Yankees are down. They're down 6-1, but they get it to within 3. Rodón gets taken out of the game. Judge comes up, hits a 3-run homer to tie the game, and you know the rest of the story for last night. But what an incredible moment for Judge. Seriously. I mean, I again, so happy for him. I mean, he continues to rake in these playoffs, and he got his home run. He got his home run in a big moment. Yankees really needed that. The team went nuts. The fans went nuts. I went nuts. This was such a great moment. Such a great moment. But there still was work to be done. Top of the 5th comes around. Ernie Clement doubles. I mean, again, he had a great game last night. Then Santander lines a ball to right field. Thought it was going to drop, but Judge continued to put his stamp on the game, makes a diving catch. And then the Yankees put in an unsung hero from last night, Tim Hill. I mean, this guy this guy is just great in the playoffs. All he does is come in and just get outs. He got outs at game 1. He continued to get outs again. Another scoreless performance from Tim Hill. This guy needs to stay a Yankee as long as he's effective in doing this, because he's just. Well, the other thing too is Yankees need more lefty relievers. All right, because he's really the only one. But another Tim Hill masterclass last night. So he comes in, he gets Barger striking out, the lefty. So now we go to the bottom of the 5th. Stanton comes up. Already had an RBI. Could Stanton now put his stamp on the game? He ends up striking out. But now here comes Jazz Chisholm. So we talked about him yawning. And he was another guy, to a lesser extent, below Judge, that I needed to see do something in a big moment in the playoffs. Because last year we really didn't see that. I mean, the home run he hit against the Royals, they were losing. They ended up losing that game. That was in Game 2 of the Division Series. And then in the World Series last year in Game 5. I mean, he did hit a home run. He piggybacked off a Judge, but Yankees ended up losing that game. But here, he hits the go-ahead home run off of Varland, 99, right down the middle, into the second. Well, it went to the second deck, but the fan ended up misplaying the ball, and it ended up falling down a level. So that guy did not get a souvenir. The fans below him did. And the Yankees were leading 7-6 at that point. So now Blue Jays make a pitching change. Rosario ends up doubling. And then Wells singles him in later after a Volpe strikeout to make it 8-6. Top of the 6th, Blue Jays go down 1-2-3. And Tim Hill was facing righties, right? He got Andres Gimenez to line out. He gets Springer to ground out. He gets Davis Schneider to fly out to Bellinger. So, like I said, Tim Hill masterclass. Bottom of the 6th, they intentionally walk Judge. Bellinger doubles, and this was the play that Santander dove for, and the ball ended up getting by him. I thought for a moment maybe Judge could have scored, but instead it was second and third. Ben Rice, good piece of hitting from him, a sac fly. How about that? Yankees, 2 sac flies in the game. How about that? To make it 9-6? And then Stanton ended up grounding out. But yeah, that was the final run scored in the game. So top 7 comes around. Goldschmidt ends up coming in to replace Ben Rice at first base. They put Jose Caballero at third. And Caballero actually made a great play to end the game. So Devin Williams comes in. This was like the best I've seen Devin Williams look. I mean, he was touching 96, 97. I mean, all year it was like 94, 95. No, his velocity was higher than that. 96, 97. But yeah, gets Guerrero to pop out to Jazz, Kirk to fly out. I thought the ball was gone, honestly. I thought that ball actually was going to get out. And then Varsho, he gets him swinging at a high fastball. Yankees go down quietly in the bottom of the 7th, top of the 8th. Ernie Clement, again, singles. Santander strikes out. And then Devin Williams is replaced for David Bednar. Williams gets a standing ovation. And he had a little bit of a joke about it at the end of the game, in the locker room in the clubhouse when he was met with the media. He said, I mean, comparing how he left the game to a standing ovation as opposed to what he left with earlier this year, where fans were booing him, and I'm happy to see that. I'm happy that he's been coming up big for the Yankees down the stretch and in these playoffs. So bottom of the 8th. So Bednar comes in, gets Barger to ground out, gets Jimenez to pop out. This is to ground out. We haven't seen Bednar like this whole series because the Yankees have been getting killed in the first 2 games. Bottom of the 8th, Wells singles. They intentionally walked Bellinger. Grisham and Judge both got out. Caballero actually got injured during his at-bat. He did single. Wells didn't score because they were playing in the outfield. But he ended up hurting, I guess, his wrist or his hand. But he finished the at-bat. He singled. But Stanton, unfortunately, popped out on the first pitch. Got to get Stanton going, though. Got to get Stanton. We'll get into that. But Bednar, in the 9th inning, strikes out Springer. He strikes out Nathan Lukes on a pitch that was outside. I don't know if that was a strike. Maybe it clipped the corner. But that was a bit of a generous call, in my opinion. And then he gets Vladimir Guerrero to ground out. Caballero makes a nice diving play, gets to his feet, fires to first base to Goldschmidt to get the out, and the Yankees win 9-6. How about that? In a comeback win, 6 for 12 with runners in scoring position. They still left 8 men on base, but 6 for 12 with runners in scoring position. They only struck out 6 times. So how about that? That's huge. And the bullpen just locked it down. Locked it down. They did give up 3 hits, but no walks, 9 strikeouts. That was a big key to this win as well, was the bullpen, because Carlos Rodón just didn't have it at all. Not good at all. And maybe he gets another opportunity. Maybe he gets another opportunity to redeem himself if the Yankees come back. But we still got, you got to win 2 more games. But Judge was 3 for 4 last night with 4 RBIs, put his stamp on this game. Bellinger 2 hits. Grisham with the double. Caballero singled when he came in late. Rice had the sac fly. Stanton, a couple of ribbies, the RBI single, and his sac fly. Jazz the home run. McMahon only got 1 at bat. Rosario with the double, that was huge. Volpe had a rough night, 3 strikeouts. Wells a couple of hits. So almost everybody contributed offensively. But Judge's home run, that woke everybody up. That woke everybody up. But they never really were asleep. Like, they still were, like, even down 6-1, like, they got the second run, the third run, like, they were still chipping away at that lead. It's just Judge put them over the top with the 3-run homer. But yeah, the Blue Jays, just a lot of mistakes, 2 errors last night, and then Santander misplaying the ball in the outfield. That wasn't good. That was not good. And I said it before the game. I said, if the Blue Jays have a lead, they are going to go to the bullpen very early. And that's exactly what John Schneider did. Bieber got taken out early. They went bullpen the rest of the way, but it didn't work. It didn't work last night. The Yankees were ready for it. And they capitalized on Blue Jays' mistakes. And you would have thought that the challenges would have came back. The no challenges would have came back to bite the Yankees. It didn't. Well, it did at one point, but it wasn't enough that it was going to be the difference in the game, because I forgot to mention when Wells hit that single to drive in Rosario, he was going to second, and I knew that he was going to end up getting thrown out. He gets thrown out at second base, but it was very close. But the problem was Yankees couldn't review it because they didn't have any challenges. They had no challenges. But it did, like I said, it didn't end up hurting the Yankees. They won the game. It's a series now. You got Cam Shlittler on the mound, coming off of one of the best postseason starts you'll ever see, making his second career postseason start against the Blue Jays bullpen. So yeah, this series, or at least this game, is tilted in the Yankees' favor. But they got to go out and execute. And I think they're playing with a ton of confidence. This is what I want to see from a Yankee team. They got punched in the mouth twice, and they didn't get back up until last night. They got back up and they punched back in a big way. That's what I want to see out of this baseball team. They did that. So I was very impressed by that, because I really didn't take into account, and Derek Jeter, A-Rod, Ortiz, they were talking about it, because I was watching the pre and post for Fox, and they were talking about it, how they built a little bit of momentum themselves when they scored all those runs late against the Blue Jays bullpen in Game 2. And I kind of just said, yeah, it's just the pitchers you're probably not going to see. The game was out of reach at that point. And then all of a sudden it's 6-1. You're like, see? But no, Yankees came back. And the Blue Jays didn't score after they were up 6-1. So that was the kind of fight that I was waiting for. They showed fight. They showed heart. They showed grit. So now we go into tonight's game, and let's see if that carries over. Yankees got the momentum now. They got the momentum. But if it does come down to the game in Toronto and the Yankees end up losing, they got nobody to blame but themselves. Because you could have had these games, you could have had an extra game at Yankee Stadium, you could have had this series start off at Yankee Stadium, you could have took this series by the horns, you could have been the team that, wins in a big way at home, and then the series shifts back to Toronto, but they didn't do that. So now they're playing catch up. But yeah, this had the vibes of 2017. That game had the vibes of 2017. They didn't win 1-0, but they won in a big way. Their star player showed up in this game when he had to. And now we got a Game 4. We got a Game 4. And not only that, everybody, not only that, Not only do we have a Game 4 tonight, but as a last-second addition, I will be at the game tonight. I will be at the game tonight. We got tickets, so I'll be there. Last time I went didn't go so well because the Tigers scored 9 runs in the 7th inning. Yankees ended up losing 12-2. I forget what the score was. 12-2, 11-2. But you know what? They got that loss out of the way because before that, I was 5-0 this year going to games. So they got that loss out of the way. Going with the family. I don't know what to expect. I think this is the first time I'm seeing Shlittler pitch live. Because I've seen Warren, I've seen Fried. Trying to think who else. I've seen Warren, I've seen Fried. I think I've seen Rodón. Yeah. No, I'm excited. I'm excited. The crowd is really going to be in this game because I thought early on, I mean, they were in it once Judge hit the home run, but I thought even when the game started, I just felt like, I don't know, from my perspective, I just felt like the Yankee crowd wasn't into it. I think they were expecting something bad to happen, and then, of course, Vlad homers in the first inning, so that kind of took them out of it. But, yeah, I just felt like the crowd wasn't alive. But then all of a sudden, Yankees start chipping away, Judge hits the home run, they're in it. And I can only imagine what the stadium sounded like when Judge hit that home run. Definitely, I mean, it probably was even louder than when Didi hit the home run in 2017. So, yeah. I will say, though, the last few playoff games that I've gone to, they've won. So I went last year when they played the Royals. I went when they played against the Guardians in 2022. 2017, the wild card game. Man, really, that was a long gap. Well, because you had the COVID year, 2021, they weren't home. I didn't go in 18 or 19. Well, because I was in school. I was in college still. Well, 2018 was my freshman year. 2019 was my sophomore year. Yeah, so that makes sense. Makes sense. And then, so 2017, I did go, my very first playoff game that I went to. All right, and I know for some Yankee fans that hear this, they're not going to want to hear this. My first playoff game that I ever went to was the 2015 wild card game, Yankees-Astros, when Dallas Keuchel pitched a complete game shutout. That was the game I went to. And that was not fun. But they redeemed themselves a couple years later when they ended up winning in comeback fashion against the Twins. So we'll see what happens. You know, the Yankees have a good track record when I go to the games. If they do end up losing tonight, you could blame me. That's fine. But it should be a fun night, hopefully. Should be a fun night. Yankees have a chance to tie the series and potentially come back from down 2-0, which they've done that a few times against the Indians, of course, the then Indians. Couple of things, though, because this is going to bother me. So when I was bringing those up, I said that they came back down 0-2 against the Mariners. They did play the Mariners in the playoffs that season, but it was the A's. The A's are the team that they came back down 0-2. Jeter had the flip play, of course, you know, and they were able to come back and win that. And then also the 2017 comeback, I said that the ball went off of the knob of Lindor. Because I was like, was it Lindor? No, it was the batter before. It was Lonnie Chisenhall. Remember Lonnie Chisenhall? That's a immaculate grid right there. Next time you have an opportunity to put down Lonnie Chisenhall, you do that. So that's my bad. That bothers me because I want to make sure that I'm doing it right. Okay, so I apologize if anybody caught that, but now you probably didn't, and now I'm making light of it, of my mistake. So now I'm gonna go back to yesterday's video to see where I made that mistake. But yeah, so they have an opportunity to do it again. Take it one game at a time, one inning at a time, one batter, one pitch. Listen, it's anybody's series right now. Okay? You know, the Yankees still got their backs against the wall. Blue Jays still got to win one more game. And let's see what happens. You know, because the Yankees, they punched back. They punched back. They capitalized on the Blue Jays' mistakes. And now, again, the Yankees have the advantage tonight. But the Blue Jays, they hit Cam Shlittler too. The starting pitching has not been good in this series. That's a problem. Like, you can't be constantly going to the bullpen. So they got to figure it out. And I'm curious to see if we might see, some starting pitchers available for this game tonight. On the Blue Jays side and on, the Yankees side. Anybody going to be available? Maybe we see, if in a potential Game 5, maybe we see, some guys, some starters. But we got to get to that first. But something else that was brought up, and I really didn't think about this. So the Blue Jays are going with the bullpen game. They had a bye. They had a bye. And they only have 3 starting pitchers on the roster. No Scherzer, no Bassett, no Barrios. All they had was Gausman, Savage, and Shane Bieber. That's it. Some of those guys are injured, but how is that possible? You head off. How do you only have 3 starting pitchers? And now you got to go to your bullpen again. And the Yankees have seen it. So, yeah, that's not good for the Blue Jays. But, yeah, so, look, I feel good. The Yankees do have an opportunity to win tonight, even this series. I think it's definitely possible. They have the advantage pitching-wise. The offense finally woke up. They didn't strike out a gazillion times. They hit with runners in scoring position. They played small ball. They played the long ball. They did everything last night. They played sharp defense for the most part. Capitalized on mistakes. I mean, the only thing was the Carlos Rodón just didn't have it. So Cam Shlittler, how are you going to replicate what you did against the Red Sox, if at all? Are you going to be able to somewhat do what you did against the Red Sox? Because the Blue Jays don't strike out. They don't. They put it in play. So we'll see. I mean, maybe Cam Shlittler does what Trey Savage did to the Yankees. Now you got Cam Shlittler with his home crowd behind him against the Blue Jays. We'll see. I think the Yankees need to get a little bit of length out of him. And also, I want to give credit once again to the Yankee manager. That's right. I want to give credit to the Yankee manager, Aaron Boone. He pushed all the right buttons last night. Another similarity to the 2017 wildcard game. Girardi yanked Severino, and the rest of the way, it was Chad Green, it was David Robertson, it was Tommy Kahnle, and it was Aroldis Chapman. Last night, it was Tim Hill. We saw Camilo Doval. We saw Fernando Cruz. Well, Cruz was the first one out of the pen. Then it was Tim Hill. Then it was Doval. Oh, no, then it was Doval. Then it was Tim Hill. Then it was Devin Williams. And then it was David Bednar. Boone did a good job. And then putting in Rosario. Rosario gets a double. That's an extra run. That was big. Brings in Goldschmidt for defense. Boone did a good job last night. Give him some credit. It was the game of the Aarons last night. Both for the manager and, of course, for their star player, Aaron Judge. And also, actually, speaking of Goldschmidt, he went nuts. That was the most emotion I've ever seen from Goldschmidt when Judge hit that home run. Now, I'm not saying, because Goldschmidt's more of a reserved kind of guy. But he went nuts. He went nuts, too. And how could you not? And also, I saw CeCe was at the game last night. Good to see him there, giving them some good luck. And actually, also, Clint Frazier was out in the bleachers. Take that however you want. Because I saw CeCe kind of made a little bit of a comment on one of Clint Frazier's posts. And I'm not going to say who I side with, but let's just say CeCe helped us win a championship, helped the Yankees win a championship. So and he's a Hall of Famer. So I'm just going to leave that there. Anyways, so that's pretty much it. I think we touched upon everything. They finally won a game that Joe Davis called. I mean, I know they did win Game 4 against the Dodgers last year, but lately, every time Joe Davis does a game, the Yankees always lose. But they didn't lose that game. And you know what? Joe Davis has done a good job. Had a great call. Joe Davis has really grown on me since he replaced Joe Buck doing these kind of games. Done a very good job. And like I said, even the broadcast team, him and Smoltz, and I know a lot of people don't like John Smoltz because the Yankees beat him in the World Series all those years ago, and everybody talks about how salty he is about it. But even him was saying Judge is going to flip the script. It's only a matter of time. The numbers are going to change. So they wanted it to happen. They wanted it to happen. But yeah, great night. Game 4. Cam Shlittler on the mound against the Blue Jays bullpen. I'll be there. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? I might have no voice when I do a podcast of whatever happens tomorrow. But yeah, buckle up. Buckle up. And as for the other series, Phillies are down 2-0. Cubs are down 2-0. And the Mariners, so the game was actually delayed last night in Detroit. Miggy threw out the first pitch. Mariners got the win. Cal Raleigh also homered. Actually, Cal Raleigh and Aaron Judge's homers were a minute apart. How about that? It'd be quite something if we get Yankees-Mariners. You get the two MVP candidates going at it. Fox wants that so badly. They want that. But that's kind of where we're at. Everybody plays today. Mariners-Tigers gets things started at 3 o'clock Eastern Time. Yankees are on an hour earlier. Cubs-Brewers are on at 5:08. Yankees-Blue Jays 7:08. And then Dodgers-Phillies 9:08. So that's what's on tap. Big day for baseball. Let's see what happens. But as always, everybody, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the video, to the channel. Make sure to follow us on the social media platforms in the description below. And wherever you get your podcasts, you can listen to us as well. Just look up Infinite Sports. You'll find us there. And as always, everybody, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, signing off. Wish me luck tonight. I'll talk to you guys next time. Take care.